As we get closer to November, the concerns over the Postal Service being able to deliver these mail-in ballots on time is growing across the nation. We have Senator Bob Casey here joining us about those concerns. Senator Casey, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
So, House Congressional Democrats have been kind of sounding the alarm after what the post office sent in a letter last week and also what President Trump said on Fox Business News. What are your concerns as we get closer to November with the post office?
Well, the concerns are when you combine the proposed changes that the Postmaster General had begun to operationalize, you combine that with what the President said, where the President said clearly to the world that he believed mail-in ballots are not good for him politically, so he didn't want to fund the agency that has to deliver the mail-in ballots, meaning the post office. When you combine those two things, those two facts, it gives people a lot of concern about where we are and where we will be, not only in November with regard to balloting, as important as that is, mail-in balloting, but right now, because we're hearing from people all across Pennsylvania, and I'm sure in other states, other members of the House and Senate are hearing from people. 15,000 people wrote me letters talking about their concerns right now about what the delays mean to their lives. Just by way of a couple of examples that are not far from where you're sitting. Adams County, a woman by the name of Kay, wrote to us about her glaucoma, how she needed eye drops, and she was waiting 4 days for those. Usually can get them within 24 hours. Also, a gentleman a veteran from Lebanon County, waiting 7 days for prescription medication, where usually it takes a much shorter time frame. In my home area of northeastern Pennsylvania, Wayne County, a woman writing to us about her husband's workers' compensation checks because of his disability. So the range of concerns is pretty wide, just in terms of what's happening right now with mail delays.
I think whether the Postal Service gets the funding it needs or it continues the way we're going right now, mail-in voting is going to be at its largest in any election in history. The primary overloaded Pennsylvania with over 1 million ballots. What can the Congress do, or what can be done at the state level to make sure that delays or any issues can be fixed before the November election?
Well, first and foremost, we have to make sure the Postal Service has the resources it needs. And when the Board of Governors has identified the resources as a problem, and the proposal now in the House, and they're going to be voting on this Saturday, is to propose an increase of appropriations of $25 billion. I support that. Frankly, I'd support double that if it was necessary. I do think that there's some Republican Senate support for increased appropriations. I don't know how many senators, and I don't know the number, but I think that's true because a lot of Republican senators represent rural states. By the way, Pennsylvania's got 48 out of 67 counties that are rural, so we've got a lot of people writing to us from those rural areas. But that Republican support in the Senate will be meaningful if the Senate is going to act as it should, not only to come back in the next number of days to reconvene about dollars for the Postal Service, but also to tackle the unemployment issues, to tackle issues with regard to aid to state and local government, help for nursing homes, a whole range of issues that relate to the virus, jobs, and important issues like voting and the Postal Service.
Now, yesterday, Postmaster General DeJoy, as well as President Trump, President Trump said he'd like to see the post office run properly while not losing money. And Postmaster General DeJoy actually said that he's going to suspend any changes that were proposed until after the election. Does that quell any of your concerns?
Well, not really, for two reasons. Number one is he seemed to be indicating that he's going to suspend some of. So we got to get some clarity on what's going to be suspended. But we also have to understand that a number of weeks have transpired now where the changes had already begun to be implemented. We don't know the adverse impact of that. And I have to say very plainly, and I don't like saying this, but I want to be honest with people. When the President of the United States says something that he's not trying to slow things down, I just don't believe him. I mean, he just doesn't have anywhere the degree of credibility that most presidents have earned over time. He hasn't earned the trust of people when he makes a statement like that, because he's told I don't know how many lies. So it's very difficult to take the president at his word on anything. Big issues or much less significant issues. And I'm afraid that the credibility of Postmaster General DeJoy has also been called into question. I'm encouraged that the postmaster said that that the post office will get ballots out and delivered. And if he's going to commit himself to that strategy or that goal, that's only slightly encouraging. He has to answer questions that the House has and the Senate has, and he's got to execute. He's got to do two things: timely delivery of mail right now, which includes prescription medications for older Americans, for veterans, and for so many others. And we had testimony on a call with the governor yesterday about those, and those Pennsylvanians concerned about that. So first of all, timely delivery right now, and secondly, making sure that mail-in balloting goes well in Pennsylvania. So I would hope that the Postmaster General would be asking us for appropriations. That's his job. If he's going to commit himself to timely delivery of the mail, as he must, he's obligated to do that, and the proper execution of the mail-in balloting procedures, he's got to ask for the resources. He's got to be in a whatever it takes mode of thinking, because democracy is on the line. People's health is on the line when it comes to the Postal Service.
Now, the Washington Post, as well as Wall Street Journal, posted editorials that tried to refute the claims from congressional Democrats about possible sabotage by the Trump administration with the Postal Service, citing that losses in the Postal Service have been taking place in the tens of billions since 2007. Is this something that Congress could have acted on, the lack of resources with the Postal Service, before now? And is it now just seeing what it could do to mail-in voting? Is that the reason why the action must be taking place now instead of previously?
I'd separate it into two issues. Number one is there's a good debate to be had about congressional appropriations for the Postal Service over a number of years, and that's if blame on that is bipartisan, I'm willing to listen to those arguments. But I have to say, I'd urge those editorial writers for any big newspaper, get in your car, drive to Adams County, Pennsylvania, not too far from Washington or New York, drive to Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, drive to Wayne County, Pennsylvania, just by way of 3 examples among 15,000 that we got, and ask Kay and Ann and Michael in those counties whether or not what they told me in letters makes sense to those editorial writers. They're seeing a slowdown in mail delivery that's affecting them getting prescription medications, just by way of one example. So editorial writers sometimes are in ivory towers and they have no idea what's going on in the real world. And frankly, I think that's the problem with the president. He has spent most of his life in a fancy apartment or condominium in New York City, and now in the White House. He has no idea what the Postal Service means to real people's lives. More than 90% of the American people support the Postal Service for good reason. It is often a lifeline between that individual, a senior who's homebound, and her prescription medication, a veteran who needs help from the federal government and can only get that through the mail sometimes. So sometimes editorial writers are out of touch with real people.
And then finally, Senator Casey, I want to ask, what are the next steps? You're dealing with a Republican majority in the Senate. Is there a way that some type of bipartisan agreement can be made, not only to get the funding to the post office, but also to get CARES Act funding for the folks who are in need?
Well, I think the first part of your question, it's a cautiously optimistic yes, that we can get a bipartisan agreement on the post office. Even Leader McConnell has disagreed with us on a lot of things, has spoken favorably about getting more dollars. He hasn't put a dollar amount on it, and if it's a billion or 2 billion or something like that, it's not going to do it. But I think we can probably get a deal. The second part of your question about the broader issues, unemployment, aid to state and local government, which if states don't get it, they're going to cut education spending, they're going to cut healthcare spending. That is going to be across the board. I have legislation where I want to get help for nursing homes so we can get that death number down. More than 62,000 Americans have died in nursing homes and long-term care settings when you add up workers and residents, most of them being residents dying. So we have a long way to go to get consensus on that, but the Senate should be called back into session to work on the Postal Service issues as well as these other issues that relate to the virus and to jobs. And you know well the unemployment numbers in Pennsylvania. In the month of June, 821,000 people out of work in Pennsylvania. And in a lot of counties, it's not just 13%, which is the statewide number. It's 14%, 15, 16, even 17%. And that those numbers are not just applicable to Philadelphia, where it was 17%. Fulton County on the Maryland border, only about 14,000 people, small county, 16% unemployment.
Well, Senator Casey, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for your time.